Commodity markets in the green and what's coming up with the WASDE report. Jerry Gidel is the specialist on forecast for the USDA numbers and he is ready. He is eager to talk to you about that right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So I'm also eager to hear you about the WASDE numbers, but let's start, Jerry, about this week in the markets. We have seen a lot of green numbers, surprisingly. What do
Well,
you
we
think
can't.
is behind all of that?
Well, a couple different things probably at this point. Uh, the weather situation was kind of wet and that along the way in the Eastern Corn Belt again. So that's getting people nervous about getting some plantings in. Also, the news here from DC was that first we had a kind of a blow up going on with between Musk and his great reformer out there and President Trump, and that kind of cooled off a little bit. But at the same time, uh, we the Chinese leader and President Trump were having some different ideas about what should have happened after they had their truce there a couple weeks ago, and that. But things have worked out a little bit towards the end of the week here, so that they're going to get together for a meeting next week on well, actually, on Monday here, and that hopefully to get some. Uh, Things worked out here about uh, right now the U.S. still has a 30% tax on things coming in versus their really high 140%. And then the other side of the thing, the Chinese had a 10% tax on anything we sent to them. So hopefully we get some of things worked out and we get a little bit more positiveness on that along the way. But the one thing too that we're kind of doing this a little later in the weekend than we normally do, primarily because I had a interesting trip to Central Illinois. Uh, we drove down to Champaign, Urbana, University of Illinois, and my wife had a reunion of people she knew at in a sorority house down there. And at the same time, I was out looking out the window, looking at surprising the amount of wet conditions, wet weather that had happened the previous night. But I think they had to also have some issues earlier in the week that gave a similar amount of anywhere from 1 to 1.5 inches of rain. Because all of a sudden, I was surprised to see a whole bunch of wet spots. And also at the same time, I also saw not the kind of development that I had anticipated here. I thought we had a little bigger and better early plantings in April here, going down Interstate 57 here, as I said, from Chicago to Champaign, and that startled me a lot because the fact that it is probably a combination of some wet weather and some cool weather in June that potentially might have delayed even the corn moving, actually growing out and sprouting and coming out of the ground out there at this point. But geez, I'd have to say what I really saw that whole scenario, probably less than 20% or 25% was really kind of corn I thought was developed as much as it should be. And so, there were some plantings, I think, after the through May at different stops, but I'm not sure how quickly it came out of the ground. So I was startled by the amount of growth that we've had at this point, and then the fact that we actually had uh, so many wet spots. Now I have to say this is really from Kankakee down to Paxton, maybe a little bit faster past there. Yeah, when we get this down to Champaign and south, probably not the kind of more conditions that I saw, but that's a significant part of the East Central Illinois that I observed on the car and also in a Amtrak as they took back to Chicago because I wanted to be back for these this weekend. And my wife still had some more things happening at her old house there. So anyway, I was kind of surprised by what I saw in that thing scenario. I'm not sure that's definitive all across Illinois, but it's definitely an important producing area. The East Central Illinois is probably the second producing area of Illinois after Central Illinois, from the standpoint of corn production and yield potential out there on a normal basis. Maybe Northwest Illinois also has a potential of be in the same situation as Eastern, but Central Illinois is where the bigger potential is at, and kind of skirted the edge of that on our drive down.
Yes, and this week we also had this news that China had well, President Xi and President Trump had talks on Wednesday, and they kind of they set it up a meeting between three top U.S. officials with three top Chinese officials, and many things can come out of that because I think the three top officials will tell you the significance of this meeting.
Oh, definitely. That, like you say, but given the kind of uh, cautiousness and from the Chinese side of this thing to actually get together to have the meeting, which I think is starting on Monday, and then maybe we might even have some communications between Trump and Xi themselves on this whole scenario. That really is, to some extent, I think the real linchpin here on this trade talk scenario that's really winding down here. Probably got about a month left and we've really only had some. UK has made some particular agreements on things. We haven't got anything straightened out with Japan. We haven't got things straightened out with India or, uh, excuse me, South Korea, Taiwan. And we've got a lot of particular countries out here. And I think to some extent, if the Chinese and the US don't get together, I'm not sure how quickly anything is going to get together. So I think that's maybe the reason why things have somewhat got slowed down in this whole trade
Well, and
negotiations.
and they and a lot has been talked about the trade deficit that has well, significant improvement that there has been in the last couple of months, but if you don't have exports and China is a big importer, how can you get to a trade surplus?
That's the whole issue. The Chinese, uh, they're selling us uh, primarily manufactured goods and things of that nature that's highly marked up. We have in the past have been a supplier to them of grains and lower value scenarios and that where so it takes a so it's been really hard for us to all of a sudden come back to be a trade surplus with the Chinese, and I think that's still going to be a factor going forward in that because uh, internally in the U.S., uh, we like lower cost consumer goods, and uh, to some extent, they've filled the bill versus us, making lots of different things that they can produce at a lot less cheaper cost because of labor and everything else. So it's still going to be an interesting issue, and to some extent, uh, I hope we can get some of this passed and go on to get things accomplished. But otherwise, if President Trump thinks he's going to get a perfect scenario that we're going to have all of a sudden a huge now part of the reason we had a reduction in the trade deficit this last couple months is that the Chinese stopped sending some of this basic stuff that we've utilized for years, and that now. And the other thing is between now and Christmas, it's another big event from consumer goods and manufactured goods and things like that. We've still got a lot of battles to go on, so I'm not sure uh, having the deficit go down a little bit in the short term is indication we can still go that direction unless we can somehow or other. And the Chinese right now in their own bends at this point still have some pretty good supplies of grains, corn, and wheat. And to some extent, I've heard they've got some buildup of beans. But the other side of the coin on that is that the weather in the North China Plains is not in very good shape. It was pretty bad about a month ago. It kind of settled back some rains for say 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then it's getting right back to the same situation. So to some extent, their excess supplies and storage situations is probably going to get run down, and so that they could be a bigger buyer going forward. But I have no idea. Right now they can be very stubborn about doing things if they got a tiff going on with anybody.
Yeah, so let's get right to the WASDE report coming up next week.
Hmm.
A lot of data can come up in this new report. You are not expecting much change when it comes to surface planted or yields, but
Right.
you do expect changes in the sales.
Yes. Well, overall, there's not a lot of changes guesstimated from the trade average guesses here today. I'm a little surprised by that, and you're exactly right. The USDA in June doesn't really make any adjustments on this 2025 production and kind of demand numbers for the new crop. They just made their first survey in May. They want to see what the June 30th USDA acreage reports has to say. So they were basing their numbers off of what was in April 30th, and now we're going to have one on June 30th from there. So that's not surprising. To me, the trade's lack of enthusiasm here for adjustments in old crop demand, and to some extent, that's not surprising uh, this time of year. But I think the one thing that you've been watching the export sales and also on both corn and soybeans and wheat, and that uh, we had a situation on the corn where we really have advanced our sales down to less than 100 million. I think it was like 78 or something like that. After this week's numbers on export sales came out Thursday, and that so I decided, or I think it's important that we could easily see another 50 million maybe in old crop corn demand come through in that, and so we got 1.415 billion in carryover stock. I think we could see that at least move down 30 and maybe as much as I'm anticipating 50 and that. Well, the trade's not, they're looking, the average guess on that was 392, excuse me, 300, 13.92, which is down about 20, 25 million from our USDA's numbers now. So that's an interesting twist. And because of my smaller old crop numbers, I'm actually going to dip my estimate down below the 1.8 for the coming year. That's still a 1.75 is still a big number, and that. but it's interesting in the fact that the corn demand here and what's on the books and export sales has still been pretty impressive at this point. But that doesn't guarantee we're going to go back to $5 anytime soon either. So we still got to get through this. What kind of new crop prices or new crop output we're going to have, and USDA doesn't make that change. On the soybean side, similar situation here. Uh, Looking at the demand side, I don't know. Uh, our export sales to now is leaving us about 65 million, something like that, left to cover. Plus, we normally a little over it. So I didn't make any changes on that one. And the interesting thing is, last time around, with this, the trade was surprised by the 295 million carryover stock, which is down from this year's 350 and that. And to some extent, we will be getting an update on seedings and that. And there could be a few more seedings here. The other thing that kind of mentioned on this trip down to Central Illinois, uh, there's still a few fields out there, and I think there's some fields actually might have even got switched over to beans because of the wet weather and things of that nature in Illinois. Not many, but I think there is some of that around in different places. So we could see maybe a slight decline on old crop carryover, old crop plantings. It'll be released that day, along with a slight increase in soybean plantings. But right now, at least, I think we're still in a situation here with the old crop.
But
Uh,
yeah,
Picking.
another piece in the chess is South America. Do you think the USDA will update these the South America number?
Well, overall, looking at the corn and soybean numbers from there, Argentina continues to be kind of a tough one for me. I kind of feel like there's been some issues down there, too much rain, some other things along the way, and that now the corn, excuse me, and the soybean side of things. Uh, in that Argentina's pretty well, I think they're down to 10% or maybe 15% left to go. Corn, they're still, less, they got more than 50% of their corn, and that's not unusual because they kind of spaced the corn out in there, and I think we could have some issues on that one along the way. So I'm actually looking for a 1 million metric ton down on both corn and beans in Argentina. But the trade, since we had such minimal changes in that, basically they got a small decline on like 100,000 acres in corn and make half a million, or half a 500,000, excuse me, hectares increase at 4905 on that one. So I don't know. It's Brazil's an interesting one. They did increase their corn output last month from 127 to 130 um, uh, million metric tons, and that uh, the trade's looking for about 1.5 million increase on that this month. Uh, that's a really, it's an interesting situation. Uh, I think there's been too much dryness since the 1st of May for that to happen. Other people saw a one-time shot here about 10 days ago that came down through Mato Grosso del Sol and on into Paraná, and that is going to maybe save the crop there and maybe get a little bit of a boost there. We'll see if that comes about. USDA is always pretty cautious about that, and we haven't. There's other people that, even in Brazil, that have increased their expectations for corn, and other people have still kept them basically unchanged or minimal numbers here. Nothing over the 130 number the USDA had before from there. Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's it. We're going to see what comes up of out of the report, and we'll discuss next week. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, well, we don't want to forget the wheat though, because wheat's coming out, and that I think the winter wheat number is going to be down a little bit because of some reports I got from people in this Texas, Oklahoma area. This rain has washed out some of their yield capabilities, and that. So that's kind of a twist that I think a lot of the people are looking for. Rain makes grain, but in those two states, there was talked about that being tough, and right now, at least, there's been a mixed situation in Kansas where they're uh, still got some issues about uh, some wheat virus down there. So we'll see. But wheat, it would be good to see that we've got a little less wheat than a little more, but as we get into harvest, but that's highly important because that's what we're going to be harvesting next. But yes, this coming week is going to be kind of bouncing and back and forth here as we get ahead of the USDA's report on Thursday and then we'll have lots of things to talk about next week.
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care.